The dust had barely settled from the days of the judges, and Israel stood at a crossroads. For years, the people had cried out for deliverance when enemies oppressed them, and each time, God raised up a judge to save them. But now, their cries shifted. They looked around at the nations surrounding them and yearned for something more visible, more tangible. They wanted a king. Israel demands a king. The prophet Samuel was a man after God's heart, a faithful judge and priest who had led the nation well. But the people came to him, restless and dissatisfied.
Give us a king to lead us like all the other nations have.
1 Samuel 8, verse 5. Samuel's heart sank. He saw what they could not, the danger of replacing God's rule with human rule. Samuel warned them. A king would take their sons for war, their daughters for labor, their fields, and their freedom. But they refused to listen. And God, honoring their free will, said,
Listen to them and give them a king.
1 Samuel 8, verse 22. Saul, the king of the people's choice. Enter Saul, tall, handsome, strong. He looked every bit the part of a king. The people rejoiced when Samuel anointed him. At first, Saul showed promise. He led military victories, rallied the tribes, and brought unity. But cracks soon appeared in his character. Saul grew impatient. When Samuel delayed offering a sacrifice, Saul took matters into his own hands, disobeying God's command. Later, he refused to fully carry out God's instructions against the Amalekites, choosing instead to keep the best spoils for himself. Samuel confronted him.
To obey is better than sacrifice. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king.
1 Samuel 15 verses 22 to 23. Saul's reign descended into paranoia, insecurity, and spiritual darkness. God had turned his eyes elsewhere. David, a man after God's own heart. While Saul clung to power, God sent Samuel to the quiet hills of Bethlehem, to the house of Jesse. One by one, Jesse's sons paraded before Samuel, strong, impressive men. But God whispered,
Do not consider his appearance. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart.
1 Samuel 16 verse 7. Then came the youngest, David, a shepherd boy, forgotten in the fields. Samuel anointed him, and from that day forward, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. David's faith was soon displayed when Israel faced the towering giant, Goliath. While seasoned warriors trembled, David stepped forward with nothing but a sling and unshakable trust.
You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty.
1 Samuel 17 verse 45. With a single stone, Goliath fell. David's fame grew, but so did Saul's jealousy. Saul hunted him relentlessly, but David refused to retaliate, honoring God's anointing even in Saul's madness. David's reign, triumph, and tragedy. Eventually, Saul fell on the battlefield, and David ascended to the throne. His reign was marked by victories. He united the tribes, established Jerusalem as the capital, and brought the Ark of the Covenant into the city with songs of joy. David longed to build a temple for God, but God had other plans. Instead, he made a covenant.
Your house and your kingdom will endure forever before me. Your throne will be established forever.
2 Samuel 7 verse 16. Solomon, Wisdom and the Golden Age. After David's death, his son Solomon took the throne. Early in his reign, God appeared to him, offering anything he desired. Solomon famously asked,
"Give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong."
1 Kings 3 verse 9. God granted him unparalleled wisdom, and under Solomon, Israel flourished. Nations marveled at his insight. The Queen of Sheba traveled to witness his greatness. Solomon also built the Grand Temple in Jerusalem, a magnificent dwelling place for God's presence. On the day of dedication, Solomon prayed,
"The heavens, even the highest heaven, cannot contain you. How much less this temple I have built?"
1 Kings 8 verse 27. The divided kingdom, pride and rebellion. After Solomon's death, his son Rehoboam ascended the throne. Instead of ruling with wisdom, Rehoboam listened to foolish advisers who urged him to increase the burdens on the people. The 10 northern tribes rebelled, appointing Jeroboam as their king. Thus, the United Kingdom split.
Israel, northern kingdom, led by Jeroboam, filled with idolatry. Judah, southern kingdom, ruled by Rehoboam, retaining Jerusalem and the temple.
Jeroboam introduced golden calves, fearing his people would return to Judah for worship. His actions set Israel on a path of rebellion against God. Prophets cry out, warnings and pleas. As kings rose and fell, most in Israel did evil, turning away from God's laws. Corruption spread, injustice flourished, and idol worship polluted the land. But God did not remain silent. He raised up prophets, men and women who stood boldly in the face of kings and called the nation back to righteousness. One of the most powerful voices was Elijah, who confronted Ahab and Jezebel, rulers who promoted Baal worship. On Mount Carmel, Elijah issued a challenge.
"How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him."
1 Kings 18 verse 21. A fiery showdown ensued. Baal's prophets cried out, cutting themselves in desperation, but no answer came. Elijah prayed, and fire fell from heaven, consuming his sacrifice, the altar, and even the water surrounding it. The people fell on their faces, declaring,
"The Lord, he is God."
1 Kings 18 verse 39. Yet even with signs and miracles, Israel's heart remained hard. Judah's kings, flickers of faithfulness. While Israel's kings consistently turned from God, Judah experienced brief revivals under kings like Hezekiah and Josiah. These leaders tore down idols, restored the temple, and led reforms. But overall, the downward spiral continued. Pride, greed, and idolatry took root, leading both kingdoms toward inevitable judgment. The fall, consequences of rebellion. After centuries of warnings, God allowed both kingdoms to fall. In 722 BC, Assyria conquered the northern kingdom of Israel, scattering the tribes and erasing them from history. In 586 BC, Babylon, led by Nebuchadnezzar, besieged Jerusalem, destroyed Solomon's temple, and carried the people of Judah into exile. The once glorious kingdom lay in ruins. God's people, stripped of their land, their temple, and their freedom, were left to wrestle with the consequences of generations of disobedience. Yet, hope remained. Even in exile, God's promises stood firm. The covenant with David was not forgotten. Prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah spoke of a coming Messiah, a suffering servant, who would redeem not just Israel, but all nations. The failure of kings and the fall of kingdoms were not the end. God's plan stretched beyond human rebellion, pointing to a king whose reign would be eternal, whose heart would never stray. A God who keeps his covenant. The story of Israel's kings and divided kingdom is a sobering reminder of human frailty. Power corrupts, pride blinds, and without God, even the mightiest fall. But woven through it all is the faithfulness of God, a God who calls, warns, disciplines, and ultimately redeems. The throne of David may have crumbled, but from his line would come the King of Kings,